What's up, everybody? Zach from SoulKiller,
Dave from SoulKiller.
and we're here to show you Odin 3.1.
So I'm going to start by opening the interface here.
And it is beautiful. This GUI is one of my favorites. It's fully resizable. Any size of your screen it can fit. If you want it to be real tiny, I don't know why you would, but you can do that.
And
Sick.
we'll pop open Odin 2 just for reference here too.
There's a lot of new features in Odin 3.1, and we're going to get to them soon. But we're just going to go over the entire plugin and show you what it's got. Odin 3.1 features a lot of the same things that Odin 2 had. It's got the humanize function. You can do stereo guitars in one instance. But now also there's new pickup configurations. So you've got a default bridge pickup, and then you've got like the Fishman Modern bridge as well, and a neck pickup for the first time.
Over to the playing tab.
The playing tab is kind of interesting. There's a soften attack in case you want to do some real pretty light stuff. Now there's a string select function, which is probably my favorite thing they added. With string selecting, you're able to force the plugin to use certain strings, whereas in Odin 2, like you would start traveling up the fretboard and you'd end up on really high strings and it doesn't have the same girth that you're looking for.
Yeah, so you have the auto mode that's by default, and then if you want to get into the nitty-gritty stuff like our guitar player does, you just switch it over to manual.
And it is key to doing that, to making your performance sound as real as possible. Speaking of realism, human noises is up next. Yeah, got your typical string noise, your mute noise, and your left-hand sliding noises. I don't typically use those because when you edit real guitars, you're cutting a lot of that out anyway.
From what I remember with Odin 2, it was like it didn't have these like multiple options. It was just one knob that was humanize.
Yep.
And I also remember it being like if it was on at all, it was kind of almost too much noise for me. And like Zach said, he would send me stems sometimes, and then I would be going in and editing, like strip silencing, essentially all that human performance, which is crazy. I'm like making a MIDI virtual instrument sound more robotic. It was really weird, but
Yeah.
It's 2024, so.
Yep. Another one of my favorite features that's added is the auto chord delay. So as you know, we're all human. When you pick your strings, you're not hitting all of them in a chord at the exact same time. So now you can set that delay. Instead of having to flam your MIDI notes, it just handles it for you, and it's all in milliseconds, so you can time it to your song if you want.
Over to the advanced tab.
There's some settings that I don't touch. The realign phase and note ring out. I just open it up, and at default, it works for me. But if you notice anything weird with your phase, using like the panned preset, just go in there and move it around until you're happy.
I think those are new in 3.1, and I think if you had Odin 3 and you're updating to 3.1, just go in and set your settings to about what we have here, and you should be good, and your stuff should sound the same and should translate between your old projects and new.
Yep. Speaking of 3.1 updates, one of my favorite things about this is key switch latching. I hate having to extend MIDI notes across an entire passage if I'm using a specific key switch for that. I just like to set 1/16th note and boom, it's good to go until I use a different one. Pick attack. This is an interesting one. With Odin 3's launch, a big thing that people asked for was more pick attack, which I already felt like it had a lot, but more is always more. You're able to click the enforce button and then change the attack impact to your pleasing. Again, this is something that I kind of just open up and leave at default if I'm using the enforce. I don't use it as much because it does add a tiny bit of delay. So when you export your stems, you're going to have to nudge them back a little. Auto slides, a very cool feature as well. Nothing sucks more than wanting to do some real cool solo licks, and you go to slide that note and it just hops to the next fret. Having this is really helpful.
Bend intensity.
Bend intensity is kind of cool. Again, I leave it at default. It works out for me. But if you make some fall, I know you're out there. You're going to want to go up to like 5 or 6, and you're going to be getting some real big wows out of it. Shaper Again, not something that I use, but there is decay and sustain settings for your mutes and other sounds that you make.
This next part I find super interesting, and I was messing around with it yesterday, and I actually felt like it did change the tonality. So Zach can probably explain this a little better as a guitarist.
Yep, so this is just gives you a bunch of different tunings. This is sampled of an 8-string guitar. So you do have the availability of every single string, but with this you can set the guitar to react like a 7-string or a 6-string or certain tunings for 8-string guitars. Like for us, our main tuning is drop G sharp. That's not available here, but I could pick 7-string drop G, and I'll be pretty close. It does make your tone brighter because when you instantiate the 7-string or the 6-string, you are turning off your 8th string or 7th string, respectively. So keep that in mind. If you want them big girthy chugs, stick on the 8th string and just don't look at the GUI because you might get confused.
Yeah, and for us, I think if I'm not mistaken, we play in like G sharp on a 6 baritone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But like I think just playing around with this, we kind of are gravitating towards the 8th string just because it sounds thicker. So
A lot thicker.
yeah.
Now we can go through, we can show you some of the new key switches really quick. The new key switch list is huge. There are so many new options that you have. Compared to Odin 2, it's like you're reading the last Harry Potter book with Odin 3 and the first Harry Potter book with Odin 2. There's so much more going on. I love having dead notes. It's so nice to be able to have up and down dead notes. The auto slide is also a key switch in case you don't feel like automating the knob. I feel like the new scrapes are a lot different. Auto power chord is also a new key switch, meaning you can take one single MIDI note and it'll create a chord stack for you instead of having to go through and programming your chords. I still do, but if you're trying to get an idea out real fast, it's a super awesome thing to use. The new nasty pinch harmonic, very, very cool. Nobody likes a weak little, we want that, you know. And now you have a key switch for it, or you can just use velocity layer 127.
Another thing I see here too that I think, if I'm not mistaken, is the string selectors. So if you like wanted to, it's kind of playing a note on one string and you want to force it to play on another, you can actually do a key switch for that.
Yeah, so a lot of the riffs that we play are on the lowest string. And one of the problems that we faced while writing our EP with Odin 2 was that notes were being played on higher strings and the timbre just really wasn't what we were looking for. For instance, if I was playing the 12th fret, it would sound almost like, you know, the 5th fret on the next string up, and it just didn't give that same energy that we were looking for. And now we have full control over every string, and you can really get crazy and do some really cool licks and make them sound a lot different just by moving the string force around. Force string.
Yeah. One more thing. So a lot of times when I used to use Odin 2, I would just go to the Swift mode, and I'm seeing that there are some velocity triggers here. So I'm just curious, do you know if there is still that kind of like Swift mode aspect to it if you wanted to just get something down and use velocity to trigger?
There is
stuff?
not a Swift mode engage anymore, but all the time you are in Swift mode. So you can completely ignore key switches. You can just go velocity by velocity. So you've got your dead notes, you've got the closed, more like choked off palm mutes. You've got those big new blooming palm mutes in between 34 and 25 on the velocity layers. And then your standard alt picking and that nasty pinch harmonic all the way at the top. I can't wait to show you guys that.
And then what if if you're primarily using key switches, then what velocity do you set your notes at?
When you do use a key switch, velocity does not matter. The key switch is always going to bypass your velocity,
Okay.
which is something that can be an issue. I've gone through and programmed things and hit a key switch by accident. I'm like, what's going on? You know, something can be weird. So make sure that if you are using key switches, that you're making sure that you aren't doubling up because you can't do both. You can't have a key switch and a velocity trigger. They just don't work together.
Gotcha. Okay, and then one last thing, I don't think we touched on this, but it does have a few different modes here on the left, which right now we're on DI, which is just going to give you the direct signal. Rhythm is just going to be like a built-in
It's like a
tone.
I think it's a 5150. I think.
Yeah, it's a nice solid like writing rhythm tone.
The lead is very nice. If I'm remembering correctly, the lead also does have a delay, and so does the clean channel. I do believe there are effects built in as well.
Okay. So anything, it's going to be a little bit different than how Odin 2 was set up with, like, it had a DI for rhythm and it had a DI for leads.
Yes.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So all three of these tones are essentially more like pre-built kind of stuff, and then the DI is just the one that you would use for rhythm or lead.
Correct.
If you want to build your own tone.
Another new thing in Odin 3 that we didn't have in Odin 2 is now you can hit the piano roll and you can actually audition notes. It's so clutch when you're trying to write a riff and something's just not sounding right. Like it might be your lowest note or whatever it is. And you can just go through and audition each note and then maybe even change the key of the song if you're like, wait, this sounds so much cooler. And at the bottom, while you're playing back your MIDI that you have in Ableton or in whatever DAW you're using, you can see the performance reflected on the piano roll and the key switches and the string mods happening all at the same time. It's so sick to just leave Odin open after you write a song and watch it play back. It's so fun.
So we'll get into the part of just kind of giving you a sound demo, and we also, for context, we write music that's very electronic focused. So Odin 2 actually ended up on our EP, and it really, I think, fits our sound. We really want that tight electronic sound, so it just was perfect for us, and we're stoked to get into more stuff with Odin 3 and have a little bit more flexibility, but still have like that tightness. And so what we have here today is our track Devil, and again, that track came out last month and has Odin 2, but we just wanted to kind of get in and do a comparison and see what would it sound like with Odin 3. And Zach even went in and kind of reprogrammed things and utilized some of those extra features.
Yep. So our song Devil, we're going to let it roll for a little bit so you can kind of hear what Odin 3 sounds like in a full mix. Again, these are the fully produced stems, so you're basically hearing the master of Devil with new guitars.
Really, as far as tone goes, right now, all I have is STL Tone Hub after the DI for Odin 3, and it's just basically like an Alpha Wolf.
Beta Puppies.
It's called Beta Puppies, but it's definitely Alpha Wolf rhythm tone. Literally didn't do anything, just turned it up a little bit. So that's what we got for tone.
Cool. Couple things that I want to touch on real quick that I find really cool while writing with Odin. You'll notice for the velocity layers at the bottom of your screen, for the first note of the chorus, I push the velocity up a little bit. And that's just because I want the beginning to really slap you in the face when it comes in. Definitely play with your velocity layers. You can get so many different sounds in Odin 3.1 that you really couldn't get with Odin 2 because of how detailed they were with sampling this. Every single string, every single fret, it all sounds so cohesive now and so fun. There's actually something that I changed that isn't in the actual Devil version. There's a couple key switches that I did differently. I used some dead note key switches. So you can see I'm using these different key switches at the bottom. And if you've got Odin 3, you can open it up and see exactly which ones I'm using. I believe it's just down picks, up picks. There's definitely some dead notes and some scrapes.
Let's open up Odin and play that part because you did so much key switching, and then we can probably see what it's actually using.
Yep, very true.
And I believe that's actually a new feature in 3.1 is this having the yellow highlight which key switch you're using. If I'm not mistaken, that's
Oh, did
new
it
as
do it
well.
up there too? I haven't even noticed that.
Oh, you were looking in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he like added like a yellow glow to the active key switch. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can just sit there and watch the piano roll all day. It's so fun to just see it all move around. The breakdown. I did add Maxime recently made a video talking about rakes, the Gojira noise, you know, when you're doing like a natural harmonic across the 3rd fret, and it's just that really nasty raw sound. I ended up downloading that MIDI. Thank you so much for including that. It's so helpful. So towards the end of the breakdown, I've also got the nasty pinch harmonic in this breakdown as well. It's not as long of a note, but it hits the same. Why don't we just let it roll from the beginning of the breakdown, and open up Odin again so they can see the key switches, because the rake, you use the modulation for 4 strings, and you'll be able to see how that slides across the fretboard. Okay, so I don't know if you caught that.
Super fast.
Yeah, that string mod at the end, that is so key to getting breaks and to just really taking your performance to the next level. Why don't we go in and turn off the string mod so you can hear just the rake? Maybe we can solo the guitar.
Oh, is that when you're sort of essentially forcing it to utilize a certain string? Is that what you're...
Yep. So you see those ones, yeah. And it doesn't line up perfectly. If you do go to Solemn Tones YouTube channel, the video is still available. You can download this MIDI clip so that you can have an easily accessible rake. The strings and the notes don't line up, and I think that adds to the magic. There's something with the way that Max actually went in and programmed this that really makes it make sense. So you can see each note that's going up the strings, and then all the way up is where your 4 string selection are. If we go ahead and highlight that and just hit 0.
So this is like a slide essentially that you're doing manually.
No, that's a 4 string articulation. So that's forcing the strings to go from, and again, we only use 6 strings. So I thought, why not only use 6?
This is more of the slide.
Those are the notes itself.
Yeah, and then these are the force.
Yep, and I'm also using the 127 velocity, so it's the nasty pinch harmonic, and then just doing it super fast across all the strings, and it gives you that. Gojira, who's another band that really uses, Spirit Box uses it a ton. But let's go ahead and check it out in solo with and without the 4 string articulation. So this is going to be without the 4 string. Actually doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah, that sounded kind of sick.
But with the 4 string, it really pulls it all together. You hear the difference? How it was, like, you could hear, like, it was almost like each string was being picked on the way up instead of it just being a smooth, fluid motion, almost like you're sweeping.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about is the verse, if you're doing any sort of pitch automation or pitch bending, because just the way that it sounds, it's, you know, down.
Yes. That is in the MIDI clips. So that's going to get the envelopes. Should be the... Oh no, it's not in Odin 3, it's in Ableton. So I do all of my pitch bending at the MIDI level. I'm not using anything inside of Odin 3. I just find I get a little bit more flexibility.
You
Flexibility.
could send it to someone that doesn't use Odin or something like that, or I could translate it over to like a synth if I wanted to double the guitars, which we do
Yep.
a lot.
And you'll notice too that I do start the bend slightly before the MIDI note. That's just because me as a player, I bend extremely hard, so my bends come in right away and they're super fast. So I like to get that a little bit early.
It's almost like you're bending up on the previous note a little bit.
Yeah, and again, that's just how I play. If I know a bend is coming up, I'm starting to get ready as I'm moving frets. I think we kind of hit everything. Yeah. Thank you to Solemn Tones for shooting Odin 3.1 over to us. I was very involved with watching the release and learning as much as I can about the plugin before we actually got our hands on it. It definitely helps to learn. So watch this video, go to Solemn Tones YouTube, watch all of his videos, and then just start writing music. Let this be a tool to help you. It's definitely helped us a lot, even outside of SoulKiller.
Yeah, thank you to Solemn Tones for hooking us up with this. As you can see, we're both really stoked on it, and we use it for SoulKiller, and I even use it on my own solo stuff, so it's a great tool. So be sure to get yourself a copy.
Yep. Thanks.
Peace.